With us now is Daisy Ellis, who's from the Terence Higgins Trust, which campaigns on HIV and sexual health. And we'd spoken to him already with the film Pride that was out, based on his life. Yes. Interesting what's happening now. Many people will be thinking, why are young children, young adults, not aware, as we would have thought they all would have been when we started learning about HIV and AIDS when we were children? Why are they not aware now?
It's a different time. So back in the 80s when HIV was, we were first aware of HIV, there were big national campaigns, there was a lot of a national conversation. But these days that's not happening so much, and more importantly, young people aren't necessarily taught about it in schools. So what we would like to see is compulsory sex and relationships education, so that every single young person leaves school with a good understanding of HIV, STIs, and more importantly, broader sex and relationships issues. But because it's not compulsory, it's very patchy out there, and we need to make sure that that's age appropriate and carried on throughout their schooling. We also then need to make sure that there are good prevention messages reaching those key groups and sustaining them, and actually making sure that wherever there is a testing opportunity, it's being taken up. So what's happening at the moment is that where there's an opportunity to test people, it's not necessarily happening. We need to see more testing in more locations and in more settings. So we would like to see more GP surgeries offering tests at the point of registration, particularly in areas where there's a higher prevalence. We would like to see accident and emergencies offering testing, and also in GUM clinics, they're not always offering an HIV test. And that needs to be complemented by other options such as postal testing. So we've trialled something at Terence Higgins Trust, and that's worked really well, where we send out the test, they return it, and then they get a diagnosis over the phone a few days later. That's worked really well, and it's reaching different people and different audiences who haven't tested before or who haven't tested in a long time. But what we know is that young people are not currently leaving school with good education about sex and relationships, and that then sets it off, and we don't see HIV as much as we used to in the media.
Seems extraordinary that after this length of time you're still sitting on our sofa talking about why we're not testing more people routinely. Where's the complacency coming from?
I think I wouldn't necessarily say it's complacency. I think it's missed opportunities, people not necessarily thinking that they themselves need an HIV test, clinicians not necessarily taking up that opportunity as well. So we certainly need to encourage more people to think about testing. So next week it's National HIV Testing Week, and we have a big campaign called It Starts With Me, and we're really pushing that campaign to make people think about testing and to take a test. And it's really important that people in those key populations, such as men who have sex with men, so gay and bisexual men, Black African communities, actually test regularly, particularly if they're changing partners.
Just to pick up on what you said about the education and how the Department of Education has actually told us that as part of new science GCSEs, pupils are going to be taught about sexually transmitted infections, including HIV and AIDS, for the first time. But it's not just about getting that message through at school, is it? No. For example, the soap opera Hollyoaks, aimed at younger people, is beginning a new storyline with one of its characters, a gay character, who has AIDS, and this is the first time on television that we've seen a gay character with AIDS, isn't it? And is this going to make a difference?
We hope so. So we've been working with Hollyoaks to develop the story. We've been supporting them so that they understand HIV and they can really portray a realistic example of somebody being diagnosed, a young gay man being diagnosed with HIV. We need to see these kinds of conversations happening in the media so that we can challenge the stigma that's still out there and make people think about the fact that they themselves might need to take an HIV test. This isn't something that's happening over in Africa solely. It's still very much here in the UK. And we need to reduce the level of undiagnosed HIV so that we can ultimately prevent onward transmission and reduce HIV overall. UNAIDS has set a target of 90% of people diagnosed with HIV, 90% of those people on treatment, and 90% of those with an undetectable viral load, which would then mean that the risk of onward transmission is negligible. And the UK is doing really well on the second two pillars. So we've got 90% of the people we've already diagnosed on treatment and 90% of those with an undetectable viral load, but we really need to drive down undiagnosed HIV.
Daisy, thank you very much for telling us. Daisy Ellis is from the Terence Higgins Trust. Thank you.
Thank you. It's time now to get the news, travel and weather where you are. We'll see you soon. Hello and a very